Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we will cover how close to failure we should train to maximize muscle growth. First, we need to establish what exactly proximity to failure is, and how this can be quantified. Proximity to failure in the simplest sense refers to how close a set is taken to failure. This can be quantified using the reps in reserve or the rate of perceived exertion scales. These are subjective scales which require trainees to judge how many reps they could have performed before failure. Therefore, it is a subjective estimation of proximity to failure and may be influenced by many individual factors. The scales basically look like this. 0 reps in reserve, or an RPE of 10, means that no more reps could have been performed in that set. 1 rep in reserve, or an RPE of 9, means that 1 more rep could have been performed in that set. 2 reps in reserve, or an RPE of 8, means that 2 more reps could have been performed in that set, and so on. Both of these scales quantify proximity to failure in the same way, they are just different ways to do so. Before continuing with the use of the RAR and RPE scales, we first need to make sure that it is a somewhat accurate measure of proximity to failure. There are several studies investigating the validity of these scales, with all studies finding fairly positive results. This study found that when performing the squat with 70% of 1RM to failure, trainees were accurately able to predict repetitions in reserve using the RPE scale. It was also found that as trainees got closer to failure, reps in reserve predictions were more accurate. There also seemed to be some individual variation in how accurate trainees were able to judge proximity to failure, which was not related to training experience. Furthermore, this study explored the accuracy of using the RPE scale in powerlifters performing the squat, bench press, and deadlift. Overall, trainees could accurately self-select loads to meet a prescribed RPE. It was also found that the accuracy of these predictions was increased when sets were taken closer to failure and when trainees had been using the scale for multiple successive weeks. Therefore, the RAR and RPE scales seem to be valid tools to assess proximity to failure. It also seems that estimations are more accurate as sets are taken closer to failure and as trainees accumulate experience using the scales. It should also be noted that how we define proximity to failure depends on technique. For hypertrophy training, we generally want to use a technique that maximally stresses the target muscle, not necessarily the technique that allows us to lift the most weight. Therefore, if we deviate our technique, we can probably perform more reps, whereas if our technique remains strict, then rep performance will be less. For example, if a trainee is getting close to failure in a set of bicep curls with strict form, if they start to swing the weight using momentum, they can probably perform more reps than if they kept the technique strict. This has implications for proximity to failure because we must ensure these measures are relative to the technique used. In other words, trainees should never break their form at the expense of increasing reps performed. Another caveat to mention is that proximity to failure is independent to each set. This is because workouts aren't performed in a vacuum, so to speak. One set will induce fatigue, which will impact following sets and following exercises. Therefore, performance will likely decrease from set to set and throughout the course of a workout. For example, let's say a trainee performs 3 sets of bench press with a load of 70 kilos and takes each set to a proximity to failure of roughly 2 reps in reserve. In their first set, they may perform 10 reps in a fresh state. In the second set, they may perform 9 reps with the same load with 2 reps in reserve once again. And in the third set, they may only perform 8 reps with the same load and same proximity to failure. So as we can see, the trainee is slightly more fatigued with each set and performance starts to decline. If this trainee was to try and perform 10 reps on each set, they would end up training at a closer proximity to failure by the third set. So now that we know how to quantify proximity to failure, next we need to explore the fundamentals of motor unit recruitment. Motor unit is a collective term to describe a motor neuron and the muscle fibers that it innervates. Each muscle generally has hundreds of thousands of muscle fibers and hundreds of motor neurons. Each motor neuron is responsible for control and contraction of the specific muscle fibers that it innervates. Some muscle fibers are larger and stronger, which are often referred to as fast twitch or type 2 fibers. Other fibers are smaller and weaker, but have a greater endurance capacity, which are often referred to as slow twitch or type 1 fibers. Fast twitch fibers and their associated motor neurons are referred to as high threshold motor units, while slow twitch fibers and their associated motor neurons are referred to as low threshold motor units. Motor units are recruited based on force requirements. Greater force demands require more motor units to be innervated, while lower force demands require fewer motor units to be innervated. The strength of the neural impulse does not change with the magnitude of force requirements, rather the number of motor units recruited will be adjusted. This is known as the all or nothing principle of motor unit recruitment. This has implications for resistance training and hypertrophy adaptations. When a lighter load is used, a smaller portion of motor units will be recruited as force demands are lower. When a heavier load is used, a larger portion of motor units will be recruited as force demands are greater. Therefore, fewer muscle fibers are initially trained using lighter loads, while more muscle fibers are initially trained using heavier loads. Furthermore, the order of motor unit recruitment follows what is known as Henneman's size principle. According to this research review, the size principle suggests that low threshold motor units are always recruited first, while high threshold motor units are only recruited when required. Therefore, if a submaximal exercise is performed until exhaustion, only low threshold motor units will be recruited initially, and high threshold motor units will contribute more as the exercise nears exhaustion. By the end of the exercise bout, all motor units will be recruited to contribute to force production. In relation to resistance training, this determines the amount and type of muscle fibers that are trained. According to this research review, all motor units are recruited from the first repetition with loads of approximately 85% 1RM and greater, although this does vary between muscles. This means that when loads are lighter than this approximate threshold, not all muscle fibers will be involved from the start of the set. However, this study showed similar type 2 muscle activation when performing leg extensions with 30% or 80% 1RM when sets were taken to failure. This suggests that although heavier loads will recruit more muscle fibers initially, all muscle fibers will be recruited and trained when sets are taken close enough to failure, regardless of load. Now that we understand the theories behind motor unit recruitment, let's discuss how proximity to failure influences hypertrophy. There is no optimal proximity to failure we should aim to achieve. Rather, it depends on several factors. We will now discuss these factors and how they influence how close to failure we should train. First, we will start with the most simplistic binary decision. Should we take sets to complete failure, or should we leave some reps in reserve? This meta-analysis found no significant difference in muscle growth when comparing training to failure versus non-failure. Although these results were non-significant, there did seem to be a slight trend in favour of training to failure on a set-by-set basis. When all other variables are equated, training to failure seems to be more hypertrophic than non-failure training. However, in practice, trainees generally perform an entire workout in the gym rather than a single exercise. Therefore, we should consider the indirect influence of training to failure on muscle growth. Frequent or inappropriate training to failure may result in excessive fatigue. For example, training to failure with exercises performed at the beginning of the session may carry fatigue into the rest of the workout. This may lead to a less productive training session and may even inhibit performance of subsequent sessions performed later in the week. How close a set is taken to failure will also depend on the rep ranges and loads used. According to the principles of motor unit recruitment, heavier loads will always involve more muscle fibers earlier in the set, while lighter loads will only recruit slow twitch muscle fibers initially. However, to maximize hypertrophy adaptations, all muscle fibers need to be recruited and trained to induce adaptation. This study compared performing leg extensions with different loads and different proximities to failure. Subjects trained one limb to failure and the other limb with approximately 3 to 4 repetitions in reserve. One group of subjects used a load of 30% 1RM and another group used a load of 80% 1RM. It was found that training to failure with either load resulted in similar hypertrophy. Similar hypertrophy was also seen between the limbs using 80% 1RM despite the difference in proximity to failure. However, the limb training to failure using 30% 1RM saw significantly greater muscle growth than the limb training further from failure. It therefore seems that when training with heavier loads, sets don't need to be taken as close to failure to elicit significant muscle hypertrophy. Alternatively, lighter loads probably need to be taken closer to failure to ensure all muscle fibers are stressed in order to maximize hypertrophy adaptations. As a result of such outcomes, this research review suggests that when training in the approximate 6 to 12 rep range, stopping several reps short of failure doesn't seem to compromise muscle growth compared with training to failure. However, when training with lighter loads in the 12 to 20 plus rep range, sets should be taken between 0 to 2 reps in reserve to ensure the highest threshold motor units are recruited and trained. Another factor influencing proximity to failure is exercise selection. Certain exercises may be more or less suited to different proximity to failure ranges. This is more of a practical consideration rather than a scientifically based theory. Nonetheless, it is probably more appropriate to train further from failure with heavy compound free weight lifts that are highly centrally fatiguing. Exercises like squat variations, weighted pull-ups, military press and deadlift variations involve many accessory and stabilizer muscles. This will be more taxing on the cardiovascular and respiratory systems and fatigue accessory and stabilizer muscles, resulting in greater total fatigue with each set. Consequently, if sets are taken very close to failure, performance of subsequent sets and subsequent exercises may be compromised. Furthermore, these exercises are generally performed with lower rep ranges and heavier loads, which means the hypertrophic effect will be similar even if several repetitions are left in the tank. For these reasons, it seems more appropriate to train slightly further from failure with heavy free weight compound exercises. In opposition, it seems more appropriate to perform lighter isolation lifts closer to failure. This is because isolation lifts involve movement of only one joint and only one primary muscle is being trained. Therefore, fatigue is localized to the target muscle, while central fatigue is minimal. Consequently, the target muscle will almost always be the limiting factor to performance. Furthermore, isolation lifts are generally performed with higher rep ranges and lighter loads. This means that sets need to be taken closer to failure to maximize the hypertrophic stimulus. For these reasons, it seems more appropriate to train slightly closer to failure with lighter isolation exercises. To summarize this video, let's establish some practical guidelines. It seems that equal hypertrophy outcomes can be achieved using a spectrum of different loads and rep ranges. This is because when sets are taken close to failure, all motor units are eventually recruited and all muscle fibers are stressed. However, heavier loads don't need to be taken as close to failure to recruit the highest threshold motor units, while lighter loads need to be taken closer to failure. Furthermore, proximity to failure should also consider the specific exercise. Heavier compound lifts should probably be stopped a few reps short of failure, while isolation lifts can be taken closer to failure. Here are some general guidelines, although they aren't strict rules. Heavy compound lifts like a back squat or stiff leg deadlift, trained in the 5 to 10 rep range, should be taken around 2 to 3 reps in reserve. Other less taxing compound lifts like a cable row or dumbbell press, trained in the 8 to 15 rep range, should be taken around 1 to 2 reps in reserve. And isolation lifts like bicep curls and calf raises, trained in the 10 to 20 rep range, should be taken around 0 to 1 reps in reserve. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.